everyone, and welcome back. Thank you for tuning in. Today is the first Sunday after Easter, and in the Christian tradition, of course, we make a big deal out of Good Friday and the events of the Easter weekend, and certainly celebration of Easter itself. But we can see this time after the resurrection as Jesus has passed the baton of discipleship, we could say, over to those who followed him. And I imagine among the disciples and others that there was some confusion because in their mind they saw Jesus as a political king, a political ruler that would take over Israel. And that didn't happen because that's not what Jesus' mission was. He was a spiritual Renaissance man. He was a spiritual force that taught to look at things and live life from the Spirit within, or we can say the Christ within. So what is maybe astonishing or natural or certainly exciting is that Jesus appears many times after the crucifixion and resurrection, even after the ascension. So Jesus, his presence is made known. And in fact, in Matthew 28, Jesus has been quoted as saying, "Lo, I am with you always." So he's keeping that promise because while he may not be in the flesh and blood, in the incarnation, he is present and makes his power and his presence and his personality, because they recognize Jesus, made known to his disciples and others. So there are many, many places in the scriptures where Jesus appears to his disciples and to others. So I'm going to name a few of them. After the resurrection, he appeared to Mary Magdalene, also his mother Mary. He also appeared to Peter, and he appeared to the group of the disciples in the upper room experience. He also appeared where the disciple Thomas doubted him. He couldn't believe his eyes. So Jesus says, "Thrust your hand into my side as a way to prove I am here." And there's one account in 1 Corinthians where Jesus appears to a crowd of 500. So I find this both natural and remarkable in that there really is no separation between this world and the world that we cannot see. In fact, when we are spiritually developed, we have mystical experiences, powerful spiritual experience where we can see those who have passed on, or we can certainly continue, in Jesus' case, to receive the wisdom of the Christ within us. That's what Jesus' big message was, is the Christ, the wisdom, the love that God has infused in me. You also have that without exception. So the disciples are now being called to step up to the plate and continue to share, not just listen and discern. That's extremely important. Listen and discern what Jesus had to teach them, but to do their own inner work on sort of internally cleansing the temple if there's anything that would hold them back from being the Christ in the world. And often what holds us back is our own limiting beliefs, our identity with more of our human self than our spiritual essence. So we're being called always to come forth and be the Christ into the world that is here and now. So this is called discipleship. Just as the disciples, the 12 were gathered in consciousness, and then when Judas dies by suicide, we then see Bartholomew being chosen to replace him. So discipleship is what I really want to talk about today. And what does that mean for us? I want to share some quotes from Charles Fillmore, who spoke pretty extensively on this topic. And here's some of the things that Charles Fillmore said about discipleship and the movement within us, the movement of spirit within us. I'm sorry, my voice is raspy today, and I don't know why. Maybe because I haven't been speaking as much. So here are some things that Charles Fillmore said about what it means to be a disciple. He said, we are all disciples whether we know it or not. So we are all called. The spiritual path eternally beckons each of us. I love that. The spiritual path, the Christ within, the divine is always calling us forth to express uniquely in the world as that spiritual essence that we are. So it's the spiritual, here's the body, and we are expressing spirit through our physicality, through our human experiences. We bring a higher order, which is the Christ. Let me start again. We are all disciples, whether we know it or not. The spiritual path eternally beckons us. And the sincere and true disciple is a disciple of truth. Those who are conscious builders in the now for the future of humanity. And I'll go on with this in a moment. But Charles Fillmore is saying that we are always called, and a true disciple is one that is always seeking the truth, seeking to listen to that inner guidance, that wisdom of God, that spirit within, and then using that power, that divine power, for the greater good of humankind. So disciples are people who listen to that spirit and then seek to do God's will for the betterment of humanity. So, sometimes we hear all these ideas about manifesting, creating things in your own life. Well, that's wonderful and it has its place. But when we are called to be true disciples, the most inner work that we need to do is to clear out our own self-doubt, our own limiting beliefs, to heal those wounded places within us where we believed in less than we are. It also, discipleship calls us to integrity, that we say what we're going to do and then do it. That's a challenge until it becomes part of your essence, your nature. And to be truth seekers means to be the way of God, to be an expression of the divine. So Charles Fillmore went on to say, we are all disciples of God. He repeats himself. We are all disciples of God or truth, seeking in our individual ways to share what we know with others, extending helping hands to fellow travelers along the way in this journey called life, even as we have received from those who have gone before us. So I love what Charles Fillmore had to say about discipleship, because he takes it past what the dictionary says, which I'll read the dictionary. Merriam-Webster's online dictionary says, a disciple who is one who accepts and assists in a doctrine or teaching. So according to Merriam-Webster, a disciple is one who accepts a certain teaching and then assists in bringing it forth in the world. And the best way we can bring it forth is through our own alignment with spirit. I'll get into a little bit more of that. I'll get into that more in just a moment. But Charles is saying it's really more elevated than that. He is saying we are all disciples of God or truth seekers, truth finders, truth expressors, I would say, seeking in our individual ways to share what we know with others, extending helping hands to fellow travelers along the way, even as we have received from those who have gone before us. So take a moment and think of who has gone before you that has enriched your life spiritually, especially. Somebody who was there on a maybe emotional level, when you were going through some emotional challenges, or those who have been your spiritual cheerleaders and support. Think about one of those people, and I would say acknowledge them in some way today or this week. Give yourself a shorter period of 3 days to acknowledge in some way somebody who has uplifted you spiritually, somebody who has maybe told you the truth as in facts when they knew it might be uncomfortable or hurt you. You might feel hurt by it, but they spoke the truth anyway. And those who brought forth and lived the truth with a capital T, and that means beyond facts and beyond experiences, they taught you mystical ideas or certainly practical ideas to help you grow spiritually. And acknowledge that person in some way. One of the persons that comes to mind immediately for me was my Unity minister, Amalia Frank. She has passed on, but there's many times I feel a smile in my heart and say a prayer for her. And I know my oneness with Amalia because she was my teacher in Unity in the beginning at Unity of Washington, D.C. So I want to share, here's some ways that, I'm going to share 3 simple ways that we can be disciples within ourselves, in our lives, and out into the world. So I talk about by aligning, seeking guidance, and taking action. So a disciple is one who knows their oneness with God, their identity as a spiritual being, and by the God of your understanding. The Christ within, the universal presence, the divine wisdom and love that you are. Somebody who aligns themselves with that, not with the personal self. Now, by that I mean our personal self will pull us in all directions. We'll get upset about someone or something. We'll get very emotional or very dramatic. We find ourselves talking about the past a lot or fantasizing about the future rather than being a powerful presence, a divine energy right here and right now. And I kind of believe we don't earn the right to be a disciple when we haven't done our inner work. I know that's pretty strong, but if you are still living out of your wounded self, your victim self, you are really not a disciple called to and identifying with your Christ, your Holy Spirit, your holy energy. It for a long time it can be a dance between the two, but to be a disciple means to be committed to a spiritual path, to do our own inner work, whether it's healing those old wounds, noticing what we identify with the most. Do we identify with materiality? Do we gather a lot of things around? Do we mostly identify with the body and holding on to this essence of the body, fearful of losing this physical reincarnation or incarnation, I should say? Or do we identify ourselves with our work in the world? We can see this in ourselves and others. Do we identify ourselves as, I'm the hero child, I'm here to fix you and the rest of the world? What do we identify with? We can see what we identify with by what we predominantly think and talk about. And we do this without judgment, but inviting ourselves to grow and expand in consciousness and be more in tune with that Christ self. So aligning ourselves and then seeking guidance. The number one most powerful way I have experienced seeking guidance is through meditation. And you've heard me say before, meditation is the key to show us the mirror of what we think and believe, but also then to go deeper and help us see in different layers of humanity or layers of the spirit, meaning our intuition. So aligning our identity with the Christ that we are, knowing our oneness with that spirit, not starting out by telling others what to do or being pseudo-spiritual, that's what I call it, meaning we think we have the answers for everyone else and we put on our superhero cape and have to save the world, but instead doing our own inner what's called shadow work, the parts of ourselves that we don't want to admit to or be honest about. It could be those parts that are that which in us, which is addicted to someone or something, or to a substance. It could be that part of us who is relationship dependent. I know this one really well. Always feeling like I had to be in a relationship to be valid. Thank God that doesn't run me today. And or we align ourselves with ego power. Look what I did. Look what I accomplished. So aligning ourselves with the Christ Spirit, which is humbling. Jesus he was powerful, but he didn't brag about his spiritual wisdom. I was talking to my friend Tom quite a while ago when we were talking about this, and I think he or I made the comment, I don't know which, the minute somebody says I'm enlightened, they're not. Because enlightenment means it brings with it a certain humility. It's not like I've got more Spirit of God in me than you do. So it's doing that shadow work. We teach the art and practice of living with no one and nothing against you, and the shadow work healing is a key part of that. You can go to theqeffect.com or Quantum Living and look at the work of Dr. Gary Simmons and Rima Benario and Dr. Jane Simmons, and they talk a lot about shadow work. There's lots of Carl Jung talked about working with the shadow, and that shadow self is what we release and cleanse before and heal, as for healing, before we really step into true discipleship. So aligning ourselves with the Christ within, doing our inner work, seeking guidance. And again, the number one way we do that, well, you can read inspirational. Look at what you feed into. Do you feed yourself with spiritual ideas, with inspiring ideas? You can look at what you read, what you listen to, the kind of music you listen to, the podcast you may be drawn to, and really feed yourself with the word of truth, the Spirit of truth. And then, of course, to take action, to be of service in the world, and to make a commitment to that. I think commitment is a big thing for some people. They fear commitment, and for various reasons. I don't know what those all are, but they may be fearing commitment. So aligning ourselves, seeking guidance through meditation, through inspirational readings, through listening to positive programs like this, New Thought Ideas, to immersing yourself in those things, and then to take action out of what you're guided to, out of what Spirit is guiding you. Jesus said it as simply as this: thy will be done. Thy will be done. So this road to Emmaus experience, yes, I was going to talk more about that, but it's you heard the scripture read, and it's saying that Jesus appeared to his disciples. Another way we can think about this is when we are in tune with the Christ within, we are able to see the Christ in others, even when they're not aware of it themselves, or even when they're being hurtful or harmful to themselves or others. We can hold the Christ consciousness for them. And as Caiaphas and Simon Peter were walking on the road to Emmaus, and metaphysically, I want to tell you what Emmaus means. Let me get out of the camera here. Emmaus metaphysically means mineral springs or medicinal springs. So it's that healing energy within us. As we're on the road to our own guidance and wisdom and healing, we are able to recognize the Christ within and the Christ in others. And that's a key part of this road to Emmaus walk. And the disciples were in this scene too. Jesus breaks bread with his disciples. This is what we know as communion today. And when we look at breaking bread together metaphysically, it means we break open the truth. We break open our Bible, dust it off and break open the Bible. break open something, whether, like I said, it's an inspirational reading, a podcast, a video, that feeds the Spirit. And the disciples, as we are gathered in consciousness and breaking open the truth, that's when their eyes were opened to recognize the Christ as Jesus appearing before them, and to recognize the Christ in each other, and to recognize and serve the Christ in all that we encounter. So I hope this Sunday that you kind of bookmark it in your mind as the Road to Emmaus Sunday, where you, in your spiritual progression and development, can see where you are. Am I aligned with the Christ Spirit? Do I meditate regularly or read inspirational things to feed that Spirit? And then do I take action in serving others? And serving others doesn't mean you're preaching at them all the time. That's my job. No, I'm kidding. But serving them with humility. It may be giving someone a ride somewhere, or maybe calling somebody to check on how they're doing. It may be leaving the proverbial casserole at their door. Find a way, because that is the way of the Spirit, is to be guided, to be healed, to be guided, and to serve. Take action. So find some way today. Maybe it may be circling back to that idea of thanking or acknowledging somebody who has made a spiritual difference in your life. And I invite you to begin to recognize that the Christ is everywhere present, always, if we have the eyes to see. And we cultivate those eyes to see by breaking open the Spirit of truth, as symbolized by breaking the bread. And then the wine is the life force, the life energy to give. Jesus says, this is my blood, and blood is the life force within you. So, gone a little long today, and I was going to try to make this shorter, but I thank you for tuning in. Know that you are a disciple in whatever phase of development you are spiritually. That's between you and God and the divine within. And to go out and serve out of that Christ awareness. God bless you. Thank you again for listening today.